Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 6 of the class. Congratulations on getting through the first third. I know a lot of the classes you'll run across will divide things in half with midterms and finals, but I divide it into thirds. And I do that mostly for you so that not as much time passes and hopefully you're able to retain the information and do well on it. And so that's why I do that. Before I set up the context for the week, though, I do want to mention a couple of things. I know sometimes this comes off as nagging, and I don't want to nag. I want you all to do well. So that's why I put these little reminders in there so that hopefully you'll do well at these things. The first thing is that I want you to understand that you should be able to do a good, solid, full points job just by reading the materials in the textbook and going through the online materials. So when I set up my questions for you with the discussion and with the reflection observation, that's my context, is that I want you to have read those materials before, and then if you've absorbed what you've learned, you've listened to the music, you're aware of the musical world around you, you should be able to do a great job and get an A. Easy. That shouldn't be a problem. A lot of people aren't doing that. I'm still getting a few people that aren't copying and pasting, which means that they're not listening to the announcements and doing all the little things that I put in there. Some of you have missed some of the extra credit opportunities that I've thrown up. And so again, I'm really trying to help you so that you are disciplined in order to do that. So I don't know if some of you don't have the book, if you're not reading the book, I don't know what's going on. Again, it's really affordable to rent. It is also, I believe, still in the library, so you can go get it. But that's the idea. I know that's old school, and that we sit down and think, well, we have all the information in front of us. But when you just go online and you just Google these questions, which have been, by the way, people have uploaded it into sites like Chegg and other places like that. Yes, I know all about those sites. Yeah, you can do that, but that's sort of taking the easy and lazy way out, and you're not really learning, you're just copying and pasting. And the idea is to learn, to absorb, to apply, right? That's the goal of all of this. So if you're struggling, and we're still, by the way, dealing with plagiarism issues. I had a couple of them again this last week. So I put another link in one of the last announcements to help you to understand what plagiarism is and what it isn't and how to avoid it. Because if you do it, you run the risk of failing the class and getting reported to the college, because we are supposed to do that. And that actually will go into your record. So if you're going to transfer, those things will be in there. I know there's always this joke about your permanent record, and is there really a thing? And in the academic world, there actually is, right? Those things follow you along. So I want y'all to do well, but again, just reassure you that you can get an A in this class by just going through the materials in the book and online and thinking about what you're learning and then putting together thoughtful, meaningful answers. And that also means, by the way, not waiting till the last minute. I'm getting folks that are emailing me, some that are emailing me afterwards saying, hey, I hope that this counts. It's like, it doesn't count if it's too late. If the assignment's closed, the assignment's closed. Now, I am recording this. It's about noon on Sunday. So I'm recording it right now, and I can tell you, having just logged into Canvas, not everybody has gone into the discussion yet, and only 10 people have done the reflection observations. Now, true, it is not due until the end of the day today, but the more time that goes by, the more you run yourself into the risk of running out of time. Again, you're putting a lot of faith in the technology. You're not putting the effort in. I know we all set up our rhythm, and maybe for some of you, it's like, hey, I'm going to do this class mostly on Sundays or completely on Sundays. But I set up the rhythm of the class so that you're doing things, certain things are due by Thursday to move you along. If you want to engage meaningfully in the discussions, you got to hit those early. You technically could have everything that you need done for this class by Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest if you wanted to. So I bring this up because the goal really is to be successful, right? And I've talked about this before. And the thing about success is kind of an elusive idea. So we all have different ideas of what success is. So I think the good thing for you, and if you've never done this, a really great exercise is to think about what to you is success. And that's a good thing to do maybe even once a year, because some people think, well, it's to make a lot of money. It's to get a big house. It's to travel around the world. It's to feed orphans. It's to, go do work for the Peace Corps, go on a mission somewhere. There's all these different things. And so that's really your call, but that's a good thing to really look back at probably yearly and think, well, what is successful? So one of the big keys to that is time management. How well do you manage your time? If you have a rhythm that is always doing things at the last minute, then it's going to make it much more difficult for you to be successful. Okay? So I just wanted to give you some pointers, some tips, because I want you to do well. I really don't even want to have to talk about these things in these videos. Trust me, if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, here he goes again, I feel the same way. But as I keep getting things coming in, reflecting, poor work or these issues, I want to put them in there so that so that we're all on the same page. So trust me, I hate bringing them up too. Okay, cool. Then just do good work, do timely work, care about what you're learning, learn all that good stuff. Okay, moving into the materials. So this week is a big week. We've talked about all sorts of game changers, and that could be technology, right? That could be the electric guitar. It could be the radio. Game changers in terms of artists. Certainly, you got people like Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry with the song "The Twist." Which, by the way, I'm going to throw this out there too. If you want to really get a good grade on these assignments, always use songs or specific details to help illustrate your point. So if you just say, oh, there were a lot of great songs that, I'm just throwing this off the top of my head, doo-wop songs that really typify doo-wop, that doesn't really answer anything. That doesn't say anything. That's the start of an idea. The rest of the idea would be such as, right, Shaboom, by the chords and the crew cuts, and go into it and then say how it does that. So I want you to think about this, especially as I'm preparing you into this assignment. So we talk about the game changers, and of course the biggest game changer in rock and roll is Elvis. Of course, we learned about that, right? Especially in terms of artists. And probably the other big game changer, I would say the top 3 game changers in popular music, probably globally, really, would be Elvis, of course. We've learned about Elvis. Bob Dylan, who we're going to hear about. You're going to learn a little bit about this week, but we're going to go into Bob Dylan more in a couple of weeks. And the Beatles. Without a doubt, the Beatles are the biggest game-changing band ever. And you will be asked a question like, do you believe that the Beatles are the most important band ever? Now, I want you to think about that question. I'm not asking you, are they the best band ever? I'm not asking you, are they your favorite band? What I'm asking you is, are they the most important band ever? Now, I'm going to give you a little heads up for those of you watching this, which hopefully is all of you. The answer is yes, they are. The reasons why are in the materials. What they did was hugely significant. From being 4 friends that started a group playing cover songs, that started writing their own material, that met Bob Dylan, that Bob Dylan pushed them into a different direction, that what they did with recording and with their producer, George Martin. There's a lot of details in there. So if you're listening to any kind of popular music today, the impact of the Beatles has somehow fallen on that. And even if you're sitting there going, well, I only listen to rap, that doesn't matter. Trust me, when you get into the materials, you will see why. So I want you to think about why that is the case, because you're going to be asked about why that is the case. Also, as you know, in the assignments, I will often ask you, can you think of any examples, current examples, that may be doing the same thing? And I've said this before, in videos. I'm not necessarily saying that they've done exactly the same thing, because nobody's necessarily going to replicate that. But are there other things that are other artists or groups that are pushing the envelope, that are doing things? And when I ask you about current artists, I mean within the current, like right now, maybe within the last year or two, period. So if you mention someone like Taylor Swift, that's great. If you mention someone like Michael Jackson, nope, he's been dead for over a decade now, right? I don't want those references. I really want you to think about, if I put the word current in there, I mean current as in right now. And if you're like, well, I don't know who's current right now, that's easy enough to find. Go to those top Spotify charts. Go to YouTube. Look it up online. Google top 20 artists right now on the Billboard charts. You can find all of those things. So you're going to learn about the Beatles, and then you're going to learn about the Rolling Stones. And the thing about the Rolling Stones, I always say, is the Rolling Stones were the greatest American band ever that happened to come from England. They are night and day from the Beatles. They approached music differently. Their roots are different in terms of what they're drawing from. Both bands were drawing from American influences. Beatles from rock and roll, and the Stones from blues. Their attitudes about it are different. While Beatles took the American influence and then kind of ran with it, the Stones really have stayed in that influence, particularly with blues and country. So they're very different bands. And also, you know, when sometimes people will say, well, who's better, the Stones or the Beatles? You know, that makes like no sense whatsoever. That's like saying, you know, what's better? And I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, like a steak or an orange. Like if anybody said that to you, you'd be like, well, that doesn't even make sense. Those are two different things. Exactly. So you need to think about why are they two different bands? And I will often get people that will say, well, I think the Stones were a better and more important band. Now you can say better, that's totally fine. I will tell you, I love the Beatles. They are not my favorite British invasion band. I will just leave it there. There's really four main ones that are significant importance, and that's the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, and the Who. You'll learn about Beatles and Stones this week, Kinks and Who next week, along with other artists. And so you can have a favorite. That's like totally cool. But sometimes people say, well, I think the Beatles were more important. I mean, the Stones were more important than the Beatles. Keep in mind that if the Beatles hadn't broken through and the Beatles hadn't encouraged Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, we might not even know who the Rolling Stones are. So that's another thing to think about as those doors are broken down. So you're going to take the time to learn about these bands, to think about them. Again, you can get a great grade on these just by taking in the information from the book and the Canvas materials. Don't go look up just the question that I'm asking you. Yeah, you'll get other answers, you'll get other things, but that's taking the easy way out and the lazy way out. Learn. And if you're sitting there going, well, who cares? Trust me, it still matters, because there are people that are still dealing with the Beatles today. They are probably more popular today than they ever have been. And that's something else to think about. It's like, why is that? The Stones are going out on another tour, for crying out loud. You know, we just lost Charlie Watts. He had already announced that he wasn't going to go. He knew he was very sick and wasn't gonna survive that. And but they're getting ready to go out on the road again. So how does a band do that? Why do we still listen to the Beatles? Why do we still listen to the Stones? Now, the obvious answer is because their songs are great. So why are their songs great? Why do you have multiple generations that know these groups? It's really a significant thing. One more thing that's really fascinating about the Beatles is just how they changed. I know it looked weird that I just leaned into that like that, but I was grabbing a book. How they changed music. There's this really cool book. If you're interested in the Beatles and their impact, there's this book called How the Beatles Destroyed Rock and Roll. And it's not an anti-Beatles book. It's about how the Beatles took rock and roll from being just, you know, rock and roll, like teen-centered music that you would dance to, make out to, do whatever, to really sophisticated listening experiences. And to think about the way that the Beatles progressed music in really a matter of 7 years. From 62 to 69, they changed the game, and in really profound ways. Now, you're going to learn about the Quarrymen and Jerry and the Moondogs, the predecessors that led up to the Beatles. The Beatles broke up in 1969, but their last album came out in 1970. You're going to learn about that. And so this book is, if you're into rock history, or you're into the Beatles, or it's a great book. It's not an anti-Beatles book at all. When I first got it, I was like, oh, great, what is this? But it's really just about the impact that the Beatles had. So it's one of my favorite books to recommend to people when they're learning rock history. Along with, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been changing up books on the shelf behind me as I've been going through and adding them to my reading list, so you can see the spaces as I'm reordering things. So I just show off some of my books that I have, because I love reading about all of this stuff. So I think that's it. This was 15 minutes. The first third of that was me nagging. So hopefully we can get done with that, and you'll just all keep doing an awesome job and really thinking about and learning about this stuff, because it matters. And you might not think about it now, but I guarantee you, when you're 30, 40, 50, 100 like I am, I'm not really 100, but some days I feel like it. So you'll look back on all of these and you'll think about the world in a much wider, broader stroke, and the importance and how all these things are interconnected. That's one other thing to think about. We're now moving pretty solidly into the 60s. We saw last week, we learned about soul and Motown. That was in the 60s. We're going to be living in the 60s for a little while in this class. So it's important to keep in mind that a lot of this music that we're learning about is all happening at the same time. So even though we're learning things chronologically, don't think about it that it's all happening chronologically. So we learned about soul and Motown. We learned about R&B that led into that, and you learned about Aretha Franklin and Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett and the Temptations and Berry Gordy and Diana Ross and the Supremes and all those things. So that leads us through the 60s, especially when you get into the later Motown stuff. And even like Marvin Gaye and things like that. And then we're going to jump back in time, and now we're going to pick it up again into the 50s and carry it through with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones through the 60s. Then we're going to do it again with folk rock. Then we're going to do it again with psychedelic rock, country rock, jazz rock, even hard rock and heavy metal. And at that point, we really start to move more into the 70s. So for at least the next month to 6 weeks, we're going to be in the 60s. So keep in mind that all this stuff, all this great music and all these amazing songs are all coming out at the same time. It was really a rich time for popular music. So hopefully you enjoy it, you appreciate it. Have a great week. It's beautiful. It feels like a fall kind of day today, although I know it's supposed to get hot again this week. So hang in there. Reach out if you have questions. Oh yeah, concert report. Make sure that that's on your radar. You can do that anytime. You could do that now and get it done and turned in, and then you don't have to worry about it. So again, successful people manage time well. If you have a question about the artist, reach out to me and I'll happily help you. Again, I recommend that you do ideally a concert from the 70s later, and that you do something that has some production value to it so that it gives you more to write about. It's better to do an established band than a lesser known band, because you're going to have more history to draw from in terms of influences and who they're influencing and all of that. So if you're not sure if a band counts or an artist counts, please reach out to me, message me in Canvas, and I'll let you know. That's it for now. Have a great week. Hopefully you answered all those questions coming along. I think I'll probably put one more right here. All right, I'll see you later. Have a great week. Bye.